So, Kings fans, am I psychic? I just might be. We're going to figure out what happened and why on today's episode of Locked On Los Angeles Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Avampato, host of Locked On Los Angeles Kings, and I'm glad to be here with you as we talk all about your favorite hockey team and mine, the the Los Angeles Kings. Well, we'll talk about the Reign too, but we're talking about the Kings today here on this podcast, which is, of course, available to you on all of your favorite podcast apps of choice. And while we're here, thank you for making this show your first listen of the day every day. And make sure you come back tomorrow for more Locked On Los Angeles Kings. But we're here today to talk about that half win to the Rangers. I'm not going to call it a loss. I'm going to call it a half win. We got a point, so it's a half win. The Kings had a lead, blew it, went to overtime, accomplished nothing, went to the shootout, accomplished a few things, but not enough to win the game. Rangers walk away with 2 points. Kings looked like a team playing a back-to-back after playing an unexpectedly tough game against the Devils the night before, and so it is what it is. We walked away with 1 point. No shame in that. The Rangers, despite the fact that we have beat them once already this season and kind of had this one in hand for a while today, they are one of the best teams in the league. They're at the top of their division over in the whatever division that is, the Atlantic, the Metropolitan, whatever they are. They're at the top. They're doing pretty good. They're getting contributions from all guys up and down the lineup, including Chris Kreider, who apparently leads the league in goals. I didn't know that. That's new information to me. That sounds insane. But Chris Kreider leads the league in goals, so can't be too mad about the fact that he was the one who got the Rangers on the board in the first place. But at the top of the show, I said that I think maybe I'm psychic, and maybe just maybe that's true. So if you missed it, I linked it on Twitter on Monday. I spent a little time talking to Jesse Cohen from the All the Kings Men podcast and helped him out with his King of the Week segment on the show, where you name a King of the Week, runner-up, honorable mention, and I picked 3 guys: Quinton Byfield, Blake Lizotte, Alex Iafallo. Would you like to know who scored the goals for the Kings? Blake Lizotte, Alex Iafallo. Would you like to know who scored in the shootout, aside from Anze Kopitar, who is perfect in every way? Quinton Byfield. Todd McClellan trotted Quinton Byfield out there. He scored a real nice goal on Igor Shesterkin. And so, 2 of the 3 players I talked about scored real goals. The third player scored a, half goal. First time putting a puck in the net in the NHL. Hopefully that kind of opened some floodgates for him. Byfield had several good chances, especially as the game was going on. But I'm just saying that those are the 3 guys who I called out as having really good weeks last week in a pretty crummy week for the Kings. Not a whole lot went right for the Kings last week, so it was a little hard for me to pick 3 guys who I thought were worthy of honors, who had excelled in some way. But that's who I went with. Byfield, Lizotte, Iafallo, all 3 guys who I thought had made an impact in one way or another. Byfield was my honorable mention, a player who I think we know we will get more from him. We'll see more from him. But right now, just seeing him ease his way into contributing at the NHL level has been enough for me. And he eased his way on in by scoring in the shootout. So I'm just saying, if there's anything else you want me to manifest, like, I don't know, calling Martin Frk up, who has had like 8 billion points in his last 2 games, had his first AHL hat trick, if you want to like manifest that or, anything, I'm here for you. Go and tweet at me, at Locked on LA Kings. Let me know what you would like to see me try to speak into existence, because apparently that's working for me. But enough about my perhaps uncanny ability to predict Kings games. I mean, also, by the way, again, it continues to hold true that whenever I make a prediction that the Kings are going to win a game, they blow it. I feel like the last game that I actually predicted the Kings to win on a show was that Sharks game, because I was like, well, it feels sort of wrong to suggest that the Kings will lose to the Sharks just feels like I'm betraying something. So I took a chance and I said, yeah, the Kings are going to win this one. And guess what? They like mega blew it. They like looked at Timo Meyer and were like, we're afraid of you. Please have your way with our net. So the trend continues of me saying the Kings are going to lose and then them being like, haha, lady, proving you wrong. So I think I'm gonna stick with what I know. I'm gonna stick with what I know, assuming that the Kings are gonna find some way to disappoint me, and then being delighted when they don't disappoint me, and then maybe trying to speak it into existence for some players to have some strong performances. So enough about me being psychic. Enough about all of that. We're gonna take a look at the half win. See, I like in my soul, I thought the Kings won that game. We're gonna take a look at the Kings shootout loss, aka half win, to the Rangers coming up right after this. But first, let's talk all about BetOnline, because it is a new year, and that means it is a new time to get involved in sports wagering, as pretty much all the sports continue their march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline is, of course, the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year. They've got a new updated website. You can check it out on your phone or on your computer. Go and sign up today to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. No matter what sport it is, if it's football, basketball, hockey, boxing, fighting, casino games, whatever, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. That is betonline.ag, promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. So check it out at betonline.ag, where the game starts. So we can't talk about the Kings' half win over the Rangers without talking about what set things off in the first period in a way that could have made this game actually much, much worse than it already is. And that is, once again, Brendan Lemieux getting on the wrong side of the law, so to speak, and getting himself ejected from a game, earning a major penalty, and making the Kings kill it. Up until that point in the first period, the Kings were really dominating play overall. The Rangers in the first period had been limited to like one shot for a really long time. The first period ended up with shots totaling 11-3 in the favor of the Kings, but at the end of the first period, the Rangers had the lead off of a power play goal, again, thanks to Brendan Lemieux boarding a guy and getting ejected for it. Now, there's some controversy, let's say, over whether that should have been a major. Immediately on Twitter, a bunch of people jump up with some other video clips of basically identical plays that were penalized as minors, but certainly not majors and certainly not ejections from a game. And so, I mean, there is something to be said for the fact that this was potentially a little bit of a reputation call. It did get reviewed as major penalties like that can be done, and the call was upheld. I was listening to the radio call of the game at that point, and Daryl Evans, calling the game for the Kings on the quote-unquote radio, was unconvinced, let's say, that this should have been a major penalty, but at the end of the day, play was reviewed, call was upheld, and Brendan Lemieux once again has put his team on the receiving end of a disadvantage. Incredibly frustrating because, like I said, the Kings had been dominating that period. Now, were all of those 11 shots in the first period particularly high-quality chances? Definitely not. Dustin Brown had a really good chance, but that was honestly kind of it. But still, the point remains that it felt very strong that the Kings could have gotten out of that first period either with a goal, because they had some momentum before this, or at least scoreless. And so this has been kind of my problem with Brendan Lemieux all along, is that you never know when he is going to turn into bad Brendan Lemieux. And this can be said for a lot of players, so it's not just him. But you would think that he would be aware that he is, going back to the Rangers, a crowd that probably, a team that probably doesn't have a whole ton of a love for the former teammate. He knows that he is a player with a reputation. He knows he's been suspended already this season. Granted, biting someone, I hope, was a one-off occasion, but this is a guy who plays with an edge. We know that. That's why the Kings got him. But that edge, it's what makes him effective as a player. But the sometimes lack of awareness of where that line is, of when to call it quits, of when to pull up on your hit, seems to evade him sometimes. And so we find ourselves in a situation again where Lemieux makes a hit that he probably shouldn't have, and here we are. And it wasn't just, it would be bad enough if you put the Kings on the penalty kill in general, but to have it be a major penalty is like possibly the worst possible outcome, and as well as making your team be shorthanded for the remainder of the game. Now, the Kings were lucky that they only got scored on once. It could have been much, much worse, especially considering how good the Rangers' power play is and how absolutely mediocre the Kings' penalty kill is. But, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, no harm, no foul. Like, things weren't horrible. The Kings ended up getting a point out of the game. Things didn't get out of control on that kill. But it's sort of what the whole issue with Lemieux has been the whole time, is that he goes on a stretch of playing really effectively. Like, at the top of the show, I talked about how I was on the Kings Men podcast, and I talked about, my picks of the week, and one of those picks of the week was Blake Lizotte, who, when I'm talking about him, I'm like, listen, he is on a line that, to me, feels very mismatched. Blake Lizotte, Brendan Lemieux, Arthur Kaliyev, three guys I would never have looked at to say, you know what, let's put them together. But the three of them, their different personalities, their different playing styles, have meshed really well together. And having Lemieux on that line has been great. Like, I have enjoyed watching that line play, create havoc, make things messy for the other team. And if he could play, like that all the time, we know that he's a guy who's going to take penalties. He draws a lot of penalties too. But you do accept that you're going to be on the kill a certain amount of times because of him. But you shouldn't have to accept that you're going to be on the kill for a major penalty for him quite as often maybe as we are. And so that's like one of, to me, the most frustrating things about him, is that that in there somewhere is a hockey player who can be effective, who can play within the rules and still make a difference for his team. But too often, that hockey player gets lost. And instead, we have this guy who boards someone in a way that he definitely could have avoided. We almost came out on top of that one because the player that he boarded, of course, immediately, gets up, cross checks, kind of starts his own thing. So we could have been in a situation where it would have been 4-on-4 at best. And instead, we had 2 minutes of 4-on-4 play because the other guy took a penalty for retaliating. And then we had 3 minutes to kill. So, like I said, ultimately, the damage wasn't nearly as bad as it could have. The Rangers could have lit us up for, 5 consecutive minutes, 3 minutes, if you want to assume that 4-on-4 section was just going to be a draw. They could have lit us up. Artemi Panarin could have scored, at will, because that is generally what he does. I guess, to me, Lemieux is not so valuable that his penchant for putting the team, behind the 8 ball, or whatever the saying is something that I think we should have to always just go along with. I want him to be better. I want him to not do stuff like this. I want him to think about those hits before he makes them, because we know how it's going to end up, and he is the guy who the officials are not going to show any leniency towards. So, again, situation could have ended up worse than it was, but would really love for future Brendan Lemieux to maybe think things through just a little bit before slamming some guy into the boards. A couple more thoughts about this game coming up right after this on Locked On Los Angeles Kings. Wanted to close the show today with a little something to keep an eye on, let's say. Quinton Byfield played in this game his second NHL game of the season. And if you look at his stat line, obviously the shootout goal doesn't really count for anything except for funsies. If you look at his stat line, he had 1 shot on goal, won 25% of his faceoffs, 3 seconds of power play time, so that doesn't really count, 8 minutes, 32 seconds of overall ice time. I don't know what he's supposed to accomplish in that amount of time. And in that amount of time, especially in the third period, he actually had several good chances he just couldn't get quite on net. If you have Quinton Byfield, you should be using him. Put him on the power play. perhaps. I'm sure there is someone on there right now who doesn't need to be on there. Look at you, Dustin Brown. Just a hunch. If you look at Quinton Byfield's fancy stats, he and Carl Grunstrom in particular, Kaliev also jumped up to play with Byfield for a little while. Byfield had one of the highest Corsi scores on this team. If you remove Brendan Lemieux from the situation from his 3 minutes and 49 seconds of ice time, Quinton Byfield at 80%. That is higher than, basically everyone else on the team. Higher than Doughty, higher than Kopitar, higher than Deneau and Iafallo. When Byfield was on the ice, the other team had no high danger chances. The Kings had 4 high danger chances when Byfield was on the ice. Again, shots for the Kings outshot the other team 7-2 when Byfield was on the ice. Scoring chances 8-2 in favor of the Kings. This is a kid in limited ice time who is already showing what he can do, how he can dominate, how he can help the team. And he gets rewarded with 8 minutes of ice time. Now, obviously, if you've listened to this show before, you know that I have always been someone who kind of preaches patience with players, with young players and prospects. I have no issue necessarily with easing someone like Byfield into playing in the NHL. But when he was out there, I wasn't seeing a player who was a detriment to his team. I wasn't seeing a player who was making it harder for his team to win. I was seeing a player who was working hard, who was getting chances, and who just needed maybe a little bit more ice time to get kind of the feel for the game under his skates, let's say. And he's, basically an unknown. The other team has no book on him because he's played 8 NHL games total. So I think it's not something to throw up alarm bells about yet, because Todd McLellan has always kind of done this with young players, is really limited, sheltered their ice time in the beginning of their, tenures with the team. You can look at any of our young players and look back at their first handfuls of games with the Kings and see pretty much the same pattern. So it's nothing to we don't need to call out the pitchforks for this one quite yet, but in a game where it would have been awesome to come away with 2 points, it would have been great to see Byfield get a little bit more of a chance to shine. Now, I know this is complaining. This guy's going to have a long career with the Kings. He is going to be phenomenal for this team once he sort of gets everything all up to speed and, hands and feet and everything all moving together and really coming into a groove with this team. He is going to be great for this team. There's no question about it. And so that's why I'm okay with being patient. If you'll remember, a while ago, there was that 1 or 2 games where Arthur Kaliev got the jump up to the first line, and Todd McLellan was like, well, that was a nice experiment. He's not quite ready to be here yet on that first line. Someday maybe, but right now he's probably better served by playing fewer minutes against different competition than Kopitar is facing. And I got that. I'm okay with that. It makes sense. And, for now, Kaliev is kind of thriving in that role on that third line. Third, fourth line, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he's not scoring the way we expect Arthur Kaliev to be scoring, but he is being effective. He is making things happen. He is kind of keeping up with the physicality of the game, which I know was sort of a little bit of a concern with him. Was he going to kind of shy away from playing that sort of game? And we're seeing that he can play that game. He does have the speed, the skating to play. And so I didn't mind his opportunities being a little bit limited as he got used to stuff. I think that he's not a bottom 6 player. That is not where he should be ultimately. But this is his first NHL season, and there's no shame in playing fewer minutes, playing a different role than you will be in the future. Not everyone steps in right away and is like, haha, first line center. So I think about what we're seeing with Byfield under that same sort of lens. But again, I think it's something to keep an eye on, because for as much as fans get a little bit too precious about prospects sometimes and get a little bit too unwilling to, either let them be free or are afraid to see them be traded or whatever, I think that sometimes the team is maybe a little too protective as well. And again, I'm saying this as someone who is protective of the prospects and who does want to give them the proper amount of time to succeed and not just throw them to the wolves. So I think it's something to watch in the future and see how Byfield gets used in different situations. If we have a game coming up where it's a blowout for the Kings, does Byfield get more opportunities because the game is already in hand and we just want to, let him go, have fun? The Kings have a 3-goal lead. Like, let's see what the kid can do. If the game gets out of hand for the Kings in the opposite direction, if they're losing by 4 goals, does Byfield get thrown out there because he provides a scoring chance for the team, or does he get stapled to the bench because the team is afraid of, by the team, I mean Todd McClellan, is afraid of, I don't know, getting another goal scored on them? I don't know. So it's just something to watch as we get to see more and more of Quinton Byfield. But I was really glad to see him get that shootout goal. It was a great shot from him, great read on the play against one of the better goalies in the league, depending on who you ask. Top 3, top 5, top 2, who knows. But it was great to see him get that goal to go in. Like I said, it doesn't count for his stats, but I'm hoping that shootout goal kind of starts to open the floodgates for Quinton Byfield, and we start to see him get more scoring chances and get his first NHL goal. And he's going to have some good opportunities to do it coming up this week. The Kings' next game is Thursday against the New York Islanders, who have been struggling mightily this season. If you want to talk about me being psychic, I got this one totally wrong because I picked the Islanders as my favorite to come out of the East, and the Islanders were like, ha, screw you, lady, we're going to be bad this year. So that game against the Islanders represents a good chance for the Kings to get back in the win column. They play the Flyers on Saturday, another good chance for the Kings to come away with a win. They head to Pittsburgh. We'll see about that one. Detroit after that. So they have a few games coming up that provide pretty good opportunities for the Kings to get some points and put a little more distance between them and the rest of the teams in the division as we continue to look at the standings. Right now, where things stand, and in fairness, there are still a couple games going on in the West as I am recording this, but the outcome of one of them not in doubt. Calgary currently leads St. Louis 7-1, so we can assume the Flames are picking up 2 points there. And then the other game is Colorado and Chicago. Colorado's leading 1-0. But what happens in that game has no meaning whatsoever to us. If we look at the standings right now, Vegas in first with 52 points, Anaheim second with 49, Kings third with 48. The wildcard spots right now belong to Minnesota with 53 and Dallas with 44. Calgary is down there with 42 points. Their 2 points they're going to pick up tonight is going to throw them into a tie with Dallas and San Jose. All those teams have 44 points after this. I think Calgary should have the tiebreaker because they have the least amount of games played. So they have more games in hand than the rest of those teams. So if we're looking at the rest of the schedule, obviously we're on an East Coast swing. Any points that we don't pick up don't hurt us in the sense that we're giving points to a team below us in the standings. So this is a great time to pick up points and help put a little bit more of a distance between us and San Jose and Calgary, who are both kind of knocking on the door down there. And we're going to pretend that Edmonton is maybe going to accomplish something, but they're not. So, I said earlier last week on the show that this road trip was pretty crucial for the Kings to bank some points, and it still looks that way. So we're going to cross our fingers for Thursday. But again, every time I predict they're going to do good, they don't. So, go Islanders, maybe. I don't know. We'll talk more tomorrow about what's going on with the Kings, maybe check in on the Ontario Reign. And, of course, later this week, we'll hear what's going on with the Islanders and the Flyers and all those other teams. That is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not already done so, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at RightSaidSarah. Follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnLAKings. And make sure you come back for more Kings news here on Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.